Okay, everyone, we are now live. Mr. Mayor, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Brittany. Welcome, everybody. Will the clerk please take the roll call, please?
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate that you are present for the record. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
Present.
Councillor Paul Sutherland has sent his regrets this afternoon. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
Present.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
Present.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
Present.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
Present.
Thank you. Everyone's in attendance.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Do we have any add-ons to our agenda today? Seeing none, do a mover to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Coburn. There's no discussion. Brittany, you take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against adoption of the agenda as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Okay, moving on for agenda, declaration of pecuniary interest. You can declare anytime you see fit during the meeting. We have no public hearings. We're down to presentations. We have our consultant here on the Moon Recreation Trails Master Plan. I apologize for your pronouncing of your name. You have the floor.
So just for council's information, Anand is going to share his screen so you can see his presentation. So just bear with him while he gets that set up. Anand, I'm just confirming that you're, so it looks like Anand is no longer with us. So prior to the meeting, Anand did mention that he was having some technical difficulties due to inclement weather in London. So maybe we will just take a brief 5-minute recess and I will call Anand and get him set up through the phone, or just give him a second to call in. So Mr. Mayor, can we move for a 5-minute recess?
Okay, let's move for a 5-minute recess.
Thank you. Hi, Anand, are you on the line with us?
I am, yes. Of course, the power just went out, the internet. So hopefully you can just keep me apprised of when I need to present, but I suspect I was pretty close.
Yes, no problem. So I will share my screen, Anand, with your presentation. You can follow along on the live stream.
Okay.
Unless you would like us to push your presentation lower on the agenda and move along with staff reports pending your power coming back on.
It's come back, Brittany. I'm back on the screen.
Okay, so are you going to rejoin through the actual invitation?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll give you, oh, perfect, there you are.
Okay, I'll hang up on the phone.
Okay, thank you everyone for being patient with us. Anand, if you'd like to go ahead and share your screen, we'll move forward with your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much, Brittany. I'm just getting into it right now. Okay, can everybody see my screen before I start?
Yes, I can.
Yep.
I can.
Kathy, you can. Good.
I
Carol?
can. Yeah.
Good. I believe everybody's okay.
Anand, are you still with us? Okay, it looks like Anand lost power again.
Brittany,
So
might I suggest we move on to the agenda and come back to Amon later on?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's what I was going to suggest. So with a motion of council, we will postpone the presentation and move on to our staff reports, being the first building permit summary.
So Brittany, do you need a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, or?
I would just prefer that all those in favor indicate so.
So council, please raise your hand.
I'm
Grant?
in favor.
Girls in favor? Grant? Yeah, right on. I believe everybody is, Brittany. So
Perfect, thank you. And for our public commenters, Ann and Clark, please just hang tight with us. Please remain patient. Once we get Anand successfully on the line, we will get you guys going. Okay, Mr. Mayor, you can go ahead.
Thank you. So we'll go down to staff reports. We have no correspondence. So we'll move down to our staff reports. Let's see, services. The first one is that the June 2020 building permit summary report we received for information. Do I have someone to move to put it on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Tim, do you want to speak to the report?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, pretty straightforward. We're doing pretty good. We're, I think, somewhere around 20 permits behind, but we got quite a few sitting on the desk there that are just getting filed through. So we're not in that bad a shape. And of course, inquiries and bylaws stuff is keeping us busy, and seems to be a little bit of a rash of people building without permits, but we're dealing with that and they're being cooperative. So it's under control too. So that's about it.
Thanks, Tim. Does council have any questions? Seeing none, Brittany, if you take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Moving on with bylaw reports, I have a recommendation that the June 2020 bylaw report be received for information. Do you have someone to move to put it on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Pringle. Tim, do you want to speak to the report? Tim, you're muted.
Here we go. Got me now?
There, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. We've been, the figures probably aren't reflective of the number of things that we're dealing with right now, but, there's nothing too contentious or anything. And, a lot of general inquiries that, just because, people are at home and they're noticing things more, but seems to be that, you look out the window and you see stuff you didn't see before because you're staring at it more often. But other than that, everything's good.
Thanks, Tim. Does council have any questions? I'm seeing none. Brittany, we take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
4.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
4.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Moving on with our agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if I can interject, we have Anand waiting in the lobby, so we can give him another try.
Okay, we want to do that now then, Brittany?
Yes, please.
Okay, Anand, you're on. You can go
Sorry,
ahead.
bear with me for 1 second.
Hello, this is Owen.
Hello, Anand. You are on the line with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it my turn to go or shall I wait?
Go ahead.
No, we're
Okay,
just pulling
perfect.
up your presentation.
Okay, no, thank you. The power is out at my house. Funny enough, the sun is shining, but I don't have the ability to connect through the internet or view the live stream. So just let me know when you are ready with the first slide.
Yep, just continue to bear with me for 1 second, please, everyone, and I will share my screen with his presentation. Okay, Anand, we have your presentation up and ready to go.
Okay, perfect. So I will just click on the first title slide so we can go to the slide entitled Master Plan Purpose, if that's okay, Brittany?
Okay, we're there.
Okay, perfect. All right, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much for your patience. The power has gone out in my house. And so I don't know if I'm feeling warm now because the air conditioning's off or because trying to get back on the line, the tension there. So thank you for bearing with me. Today, we're here to present the Recreation and Trails Master Plan for your consideration as Committee of the Whole. As you know, the Rtmp is the first document of its kind in the Township of Georgian Bluffs since amalgamation in 2001. The Master Plan originates from the Township Strategic Plan, which emphasizes the importance of parks, recreation, and trails in Georgian Bluffs. And essentially, the purpose of the master plan is to analyze the township's current mix of parks, recreation, and trail services and facilities. In total, there are 19 action plans contained in the Rtmp, for the township to implement between the years 2020 and 2031. The action plans reflect the opinions expressed by residents and community stakeholders, demographics specific to Georgian Bluffs, trends and best practices, and comprehensive assessments of need. The presentation that I'm giving you today summarized content that was previously presented to Township Council this past February. It bears noting that the master plan was subsequently presented to the community and received positive feedback from the vast majority of people that either attended the open house or submitted comment. Next slide, please.
Okay, Anand, we are now at the phase 1 slide.
Perfect. Well, the master plan was originated or initiated back in September of last year. It followed generally, the project was tracking on schedule. It started with a lot of initial research and consultation with the community. We visited each and every park and facility that the township operates. Launch event was held in October at the Shallow Lake Community Center. Community survey was initiated, garnering 280 responses. And then we did a number of stakeholder and staff sessions in October as well. Next slide, please, Brittany. So the second phase of the master plan involved needs assessments, implementation strategies, and the development of the actual action plans and the Rtmp. As I mentioned, the project was tracking on schedule. It was ready for really a presentation to council early in April, following a second open house that was held in Shallow Lake in March. Unfortunately, that open house was held just before the provincial order. And so the subsequent weeks that have passed due to COVID-19 have resulted in the presentation really being deferred until today. Really, the master planning process, we believe, has resulted in a comprehensive document where the action plans are supported by locally unique factors and consider broader trends and best practices. I would like to emphasize that there was a high degree of community engagement and consultation throughout this process. We not only engaged the general public, but also stakeholders of the local parks, recreation, and trail system. Approximately 400 people have directly participated in the master planning process, and those individuals spoke on behalf of hundreds of others in their respective organizations and households. For example, the two open houses collectively garnered about 75 people coming through the doors, while the master plan survey respondents spoke on behalf of nearly 700 residents in their respective households. Next slide, please. So the slides that follow will summarize the action plans of the Rtmp. Again, very similar to what you would have seen in February, so I won't spend a ton of time. I know we're behind in the agenda a little bit. But essentially, one of the most notable recommendations that has come out of the Rtmp pertains to the rejuvenation of your two existing community centers in Derby and Kemble. The township has invested, substantially and positively in the Shallow Lake Community Center. But as there are, growth-related pressures and life cycle-related pressures at the Derby and Kemble community centers, we are suggesting that, because they are very important facilities under the township's recreation services model, that the township initiate a process where it conducts architectural, engineering, and landscape architectural assessments to develop a community concept for those facilities, to breathe some new life into them, not only for their indoor components, but their outdoor components as well. Next slide, please. Looking more broadly at the recreation system, we are recommending that the township overlay pickleball lines at Balmy Beach, at the tennis courts there, as well as on the dry floors in Derby and Kemble for the time being, and possibly, again, retained as part of, if supported by the community concept. We heard a lot from pickleballers early in the process about a desire to play. We are also recommending the installation of outdoor fitness equipment at Shoulders Park, possibly in partnership with a local fitness or service provider. That will hopefully make the park a little bit more multi-generational, appealing to a number of different age groups, in addition to the youth and the children that are served through the playground, the skateboard park and such. And then we had mentioned this past February, there is a historical agreement dating back, I believe, to the 60s in place with the Township of Chatsworth regarding the Keedy Arena. So we would suggest that the Township staff and council reach out to that municipality to discuss their future plans for the facility. They have undergone a master planning process in the last couple of years, which spoke to the arena system. So it's a matter of making sure that that agreement is still appropriate and suitable for your residents. Next slide, please. The trail system. The trail system, from the outset of the project, we received a lot of feedback regarding the local trails. It was one of the most highly valued components of your township as a whole. And at we made a number of recommendations, largely around the need to establish a trail classification system that articulates the function, the types of permitted uses on the trails, and things like their surfaces and their widths. We proposed a trail network that aligns with the County of Bruce master plans and the County of Grey master plan, sorry, we spoke. Their recently completed master plans will have been considered in our trail network. Can coordinate trail planning with both counties, the conservation authorities, the Bruce Trail Conservancy, the Niagara Escarpment Commission, for example, other major trail and landowners in your municipality, and developing strategies with law enforcement and trail clubs to discourage non-permitted activities on trails. That was something that was expressed as a concern by people throughout the master planning process. With respect to the trails, I would just like to say at the March public open house, people speaking on behalf of motorized and non-motorized trail users stated their general agreement with the trail recommendations, in particular, the formalization of that trail classification, as well as the need to work collaboratively together. I would also, my last point with respect to the trail system, and this also pertains to the parks that I'll be discussing on the next slide, but since the onset of COVID-19, we have heard from other municipalities that they are seeing greater use of their trails as people seek ways to stay active while maintaining physical distance. So with the Rtmp, along with the two separate trails master plans prepared by the county, there may be opportunity and momentum to build upon the success of the local trail system. Next slide, please. So with respect to the park system, the township of, it maintains about 20 hectares or 50 acres across 10 recreational parks across Georgian Bluffs. This amounts to a service level of approximately 2 hectares per 1,000 residents, which if we were keeping parkland at this level, the township should be able to keep pace with the need for active forms of parkland, as it would require about 3 hectares, which could be funded through Planning Act dedications, the parkland dedication or in cash and lieu reserves, as well as other opportunities to acquire the land. It also bears noting that in addition to your supply of parkland, your residents strongly benefit from the number of parks and natural areas that are owned by provincial agencies, conservation areas, other institutions, and private landowners. Next slide, please. From a more service delivery perspective, we, through the Rtmp, continue to recommend that the township be a provider of space through which other providers deliver programs and services. So we're not necessarily saying that the township should be entering into direct delivery of programs at this time. Your model is very cost effective in that respect, that you are providing that space. But to make sure that that space is fully utilized and that the community does have access to types of programs and services that it needs. The township does have a bit of a role from a community development standpoint. And for that reason, we're suggesting the creation of a facilitator that is focused on finding new program and rental opportunities and partnerships with the community and coordinating service providers so that you as a township understand what the community groups in your township require, and you are in a position to at least think about ways to help them remain sustainable. Next slide, please. So in terms of testing the master plan, this is, I guess, where it's the somewhat new content for council. Pending the testing of the master plan in March and April, through the website, through online comments, again, given more because of COVID, as well as the open house, which we conducted, we heard general support by the vast majority of open house attendees and those that submitted comments. Based on some discussions at the February council meeting, we have added additional references to the Niagara Escarpment stakeholders, such as the NEC, the Biosphere Conservancy, updated some mapping to reflect NEC lands and boundaries. And so those have been integrated in the master plan. Those represent the most major or notable changes to the master plan document since you saw it in February. Next slide, please. So in closing, we would just like to say that it has been a true pleasure to undertake this work on behalf of Township Council with your township staff and residents of Georgian Bluffs. The master plan will sit alongside the township strategic plan and charts a long-term vision for local parks and recreation and trails. It is important that documents such as these are the beginning and not the end. This RTMP provides strong rationale for the township to carry out future works, such as those needed to ensure trail compliance and appropriate management of natural lands through new or amended policies or bylaws, to establish directions for aging facilities and supporting continued opportunities for collaboration with local stakeholders. It bears noting that by approving the master plan in principle or as a guiding document, Council is not necessarily bound to implement each of the 19 recommendations in the master plan, as you will have further opportunities to deliberate these action plans as township staff bring them forward to you through annual work plans and budgets. In summary, we hope that the master plan will serve you well in the years to come, and I would be pleased to take any questions of council at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. I guess I'll open the floor to council for questions on this part first. So does any council member wish to make a comment? Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr. Desai. I would echo the comments that this is a great master plan. I was wondering, since we didn't get the revised actual version of the plan until this afternoon, and I didn't get a chance to look it all over, I wonder if you could just give us a quick summary of how the additions regarding the NEC and the NE plan were incorporated into this master plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Coburn. I believe that's what I'm speaking to right now. Yes, through you, Your Worship, Mr. Mayor. The master plan was revised, recommendations relating to the trail system. Notably, I don't have the recommendation number in front of me at the moment, but essentially there was a recommendation where we were suggesting that the township coordinate trail planning, funding, and the potential to link trail systems with partners. The Niagara Escarpment Commission wasn't previously included in that list when you saw the draft in February. That reference to the NEC is embed any of the partners, whether it's the two counties, whether it's the NEC or the Bruce Trail Conservancy or the Conservation Authority. It's not to say that those are the only partners that one can work with. Again, when we spoke to representatives of both, the non-motorized and motorized trail users, they want to be part of the conversation, and they're willing to be part of the conversation, not only with yourselves as the township, but they expressed that willingness to have dialogue with each other, which we found was positive. In terms of, some mapping had changed, but, again, that just reflects the NEC boundaries to make it clear how the proposed trail network, relates or interfaces with those boundaries. And so with that in mind, the township is able to take that next step of, formalizing the trail classification system and allow you to start, identifying routes that have the appropriate functions. Again, whether it is, more of a motorized or non-motorized, whether it's a winter or a summer type of activity, you're in a position now to start assigning what uses are appropriate on individual segments of your trail network. I hope that answers your question.
Very much so. Thank you.
Thanks, Cass.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Carlson, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have 3 comments. One kind of continuing on with the trails, and I think, Anand, you have said this, where I think we should be having a meeting between Georgian Bluffs, Grey Sauble with their trails, Bruce Trail Conservancy, NEC, everybody that's involved, Grey County, and sit down and determine together the various usages for different trails within the municipality. I don't think that's something we can do ourselves individually. I think we need the assistance there. My other comment would be about parkland. And we are going to have, my understanding is that we're going to have more parkland dedicated at Kilsyth Meadows. I notice in the report it says it's suggested we have another 3 acres at some point. But I wonder with all the Grey Sauble properties within Georgian Bluffs, if more parkland is necessary to be owned by the municipality. And my final thing would be, should we have an actual subcommittee that is going through this report and ensuring that everything happens and that we work as a subcommittee, include staff, include the residents, to ensure that everything gets done in a timely fashion and it keeps moving on, and we don't just dump this on staff and say, here, look after this for us. So just a few of my thoughts on it. Thank you.
Yeah, would you like me to respond to a couple of those, Deputy Mayor Carlton?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, through you, Your Worship. I agree with everything the Deputy Mayor has just expressed. The communication is the centerpiece of this document as part of your community development, and so it does require a collaboration with the various landholders of your trail system. For it to be successful. Trails are not only local; they are regional, and especially in your community with trails such as the Bruce Trail, there is a sizable economic impact and benefit of having those. So that coordinated approach is important. With respect to the amount of parkland, the 3 hectares of parkland is, I guess, what we would say is a target, and certainly the township could augment that supply. We do find that you do have your residents do have that benefit of non-municipal parkland, which is excellent. But sometimes there could be restrictions, or maybe that type of land isn't available in perpetuity. So it's never a bad idea to have supplement your parkland supplies. One just has to be cognizant of the fact that has a cost, because the Planning Act only allows the funding of so much parkland, and so one would have to draw from other sources if we were going above that 3 hectares. But again, there's creative ways to approach that. And with respect to the last comment about the subcommittee, that is one of the things that could be considered. I think the deputy mayor's point, it alludes to keeping this master plan alive. We've designed it in a manner, again, with that communication in mind, and that communication is not just it's not just one way; it's a 2-way communication stream. So, it could be a subcommittee. It could be as simple as providing an annual report card on progress being made on the Rtmp that comes back to council and is shared with the community. or it could be something more involved, such as finding volunteers to sit on a committee. So I thank the deputy mayor for her comments and all of her feedback that she has provided, along with the rest of council through this master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Desai, and thanks, Deputy Mayor Carlton. I think your idea of a subcommittee and so on, I think we'll have further conversation with council as a whole on that. There's good comments. Does any other council member wish to speak? Carol, I see your face. Are you wanting to make comment?
Oh, yeah. Good
Go ahead.
report. It's just that I have to prioritize things in my mind. First of all, we have to look at this master plan similar to the strategic plan. We need timelines there. We have to set out our priorities and have timelines. Yes, we have parkland dedication fees. I don't think we need any more parkland in Georgian Bluffs. I did a tour of all 3 of our waterfront parks on the weekend, and there was still room there. I think where we have to start at the municipal level, and I go back to our bylaw to permit all-terrain multi-use off-highway utility and recreational off-highway vehicles. Our bylaws have to be updated. In this bylaw, which was bylaw 27 in 2016, it says here, and I'll make it quick, I'll just read you part of it. A bylaw permitting the operation of off-road vehicles on any roadway that is under the jurisdiction of the municipality, or any part or parts of such a roadway, which bylaws may prescribe a lower rate of speed, and so on and so forth. We've got bylaws in place that allows us anywhere they want to go in the township. We've got to start getting our own house in order. That to me is a top priority thing. I read somewhere, and it was something to do with farmers. I know 2 farmers around here that use the rail line on their ATV because the rail line actually dissects their property. So we have to respect our farming community as well. We have to respect the various agencies, especially the Niagara Escarpment. What concerns me is if we don't prioritize, set our priorities in the right place, put timelines in place, you're going to be arguing this 10 years down the road. So let's start with the basics.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot, for your comments. Anne-Marie, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment back to Councillor Barfoot, staff were given direction by council to have a look at the reporting on the NEC areas and the motorized vehicles. So there are some areas on our trail that were identified that are sensitive areas for the NEC and that motorized vehicles will not be allowed on. We have been working with the NEC and we are expecting some correspondence with them to confirm. But what we are doing is we are going to go ahead with a report on August 5th that will identify those areas and identify workarounds and put that in front of council along with a change to that bylaw. So we are moving forward with that. That is certainly something that we have been able to identify with this plan and something that you'll be getting more information on from staff.
Thank you, Anne-Marie.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I just want to, this is Anand again, I just want to reinforce what Councillor Barfoot said as well and what she was alluding to. This trail classification system is going to, it provides the basis for the town to also distinguish between areas of your trails that are more utilitarian in nature and those that are more recreational in nature. And both are equally important in your community, especially along that rail trail. I mean, that is a major transportation spine in your community. So we view that as part of the active transportation network. That you know, while that includes a recreational component, there are a number of people in your municipality that rely on the trail for day-to-day activities as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Desai. Brittany, I seen you had your hand up.
I did, yes. Anne Marie made the comments that I was intending to make, so thank you, Anne Marie, for doing that. We also have two members of the public, Clark and Ann Schneider, on with us, and I believe that they would like to have some input as well, specifically regarding to the multi-use trails and the ATVs. So if council is prepared to do so, I would like to having a motion to waive the procedure bylaw to allow public commentary at this point in the agenda. So, Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to present that motion.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. I have a motion here to waive the procedural bylaw 2019-125 to permit submissions of public comments and questions regarding the Recreation and Trails Master Plan to allow Ann and Clark Snyder to comment. Do I have someone to move to put it on the floor, please? Councillor Coburn?
So moved.
And second by Councillor Barfoot. If there's no discussion, Brittany, take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against waiving the procedure bylaw to allow public commentary. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries. And Mr. and Mrs. Schneider, you have the floor.
Thank you for being patient, waiting for us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very, very much. I think most of you will recognize us. We've had contact with you through this consultation process and other times. I would like to thank the mayor and the other council members for initiating the development of this master plan. I think it is very comprehensive and an excellent guide to the future for all of our constituents. We really appreciate the opportunities for input, and when I hear that the input represented about 700 constituents, I think it tells you that an awful lot of people are very interested in this topic. We would like to speak particularly about the trail section of the master plan. The first thing that strikes us is the congruency of this plan with other plans. For example, in the master plan, as you noted, there are the trails are listed in three categories: primary multi-use, where there's motorized vehicles, ATVs; secondary multi-use, ATVs only allowed in sections where it's connectivity with other trails; and recreational, where there is no motorized vehicles. That reflects almost exactly with the Grey County master plan for trails. CP rail trail, ATV use. Urban trail, no ATVs. Forest trails, no ATVs. Where they note that the natural environment and its protection gives first consideration over any kind of trail use. The other one is with our neighbors. So I went to the Corporation of the Town of South Bruce Peninsula and looked at their bylaws regarding off-road vehicles, and it's bylaw 98/2015 section 2.8, and they say no person shall operate an off-road vehicle in such a way to disturb the natural environment, including fish habitat, property, flora, and fauna. And I think that environmental protection is very much a part of the master plan. And lastly, it is congruent with Georgian Bluffs strategic plan. Objective 3, demonstrate and enhance environmental stewardship, protect environmentally sensitive areas and habitat. Objective 4, increase available recreational and social opportunities. Very strong and very important objectives in the strategic plan. So why is congruency important? Well, I think there's 4 reasons. One is education. We talked about communication being critical in this plan. once you establish the plan for the whole township for trails and recreational areas, you're going to have to educate the populace. You're going to have to educate people who come into the area. Congruency with our neighbors, with other activities in our township is very important. Promotion, partnership. I've already mentioned those other areas that are thinking the same way that this master plan is. And the last piece is enforcement. And we know when you're not consistent, what kind of confusion can happen. Look at the mask situation for COVID, for example. Being consistent, being congruent is really important. Now, this isn't the first time the council has heard from us. We directed a letter to you on March 27th of this year that outlined our concerns around the trails, and I'd like to thank the councillors that directly responded to that letter. What I would like to speak about today are some additional pieces that have come to light since that letter. And you have already spoken to some of those yourselves. First one is all trail designations must be in harmony with the Niagara Escarpment Commission use directives. So we were concerned about that, but we're somewhat ignorant about what that meant. So we directed a letter to the Niagara Escarpment Commission on June 29th of this year, addressed to Mr. O.J. McDonald. And in that letter, we asked specifically about two trails. We recognized in the master plan that the report spoke about a hierarchy of trail use, evaluation of impact in environmental areas, evaluation of impact on adjacent areas, and the ability to create a safe experience for users. Our concerns were about two major trails, the Curly Hardin Trail, which then loops through the Bruce Trail with the Len Hawley Trail, and the second one was the Coles Trail. Both of these areas are very sensitive ecosystems that need protection. We received a response 3 or 4 days later, and I'll read part of that. I appreciate the work you and your partner are doing in Georgian Bluffs on the Trails Master Plan and input you have provided. I acknowledge your concerns about the delays and want to reassure you we are moving forward with our investigation of these two issues. I wanted to let you know, as these two sites, the ones I mentioned, are in contravention of our act, I cannot provide any further details. However, I want to let you know we have followed up with town staff and the file is now moving forward. It was certainly news to us that the use of those sites, those trails, are in contravention of the Niagara Escarpment Commission Act. And so I would ask council, what does this mean for you? Perhaps, and might you consult with your lawyer to find out, is this the only area where there's contravention? These are the two that we're aware of and we were concerned about. But are there others in our township where there may be contravention? And this is the trails plan, but are there other things in activities of the township that might be in contravention of the NEC, such as in planning or bylaws, etc., that maybe need to be explored? I think the other question that would need to be put to the lawyer is, how much does this open the township of Georgian Bluffs to liability and to litigation? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But it would seem to me that if you were knowingly aware that it was in violation, you might be open to some sort of legal action. And I know that I would assume that taxpayers would be mighty upset if they knew that township money was going to protect that kind of decision. So I will echo what Carol Barfoot said and others said in terms of the priority in looking at these kinds of relationships. Further, around the strategic plan, how it fits in, Objective 3, as I mentioned, is demonstrate and enhance environmental stewardship, and then protect environmental sensitive areas and habitat. In the master plan, it says, at a minimum, give considerations to the type of trail that may be required based on an evaluation of impacts on environmental areas, adjacent land uses, costs required to develop a trail, and the ability to create a safe trail experience for users. We would like to add, to ensure that the trail surface can sustain designated use without damage to the trail surface and surrounding ecosystem. If you refer back to the letter that we sent to you on March 28th, there are pictures there that show the extreme damage on the Cole Side Road, because that subsurface cannot handle the kind of use that it has been subject to. I would also like to add to that the cost required to develop a trail, the ongoing maintenance cost, must be addressed. Further, Section 12 talks about coordinate trail development planning, funding, and potential to link trail systems with partners, including County of Grey, County of Bruce, Niagara Escarpment, Bruce Trail, Grey Salvo Conservation Authority. Again, your discussion today has emphasized that importance of that partnership. And Sue has certainly brought that up as a very important thing. May I add to that, please, consultation with constituents, and particularly constituents in the vicinity of specific trails. Those of us who are frequent users and neighbors of these trails have a long-standing investment in them and understand the types of use that is compatible with them and may not be. I've heard in the last short while from several constituents who are near some of these trails and linkages to the trails on gravel roads. And one has said they cannot put out their laundry any weekend ever because in the summer, because of the dust raised from ATVs. And another has said it's impossible to garden with the dust from the gravel roads from ATVs. This is impacting their quality of life as constituents. And number 13, I would add, it says work with local law enforcement agencies, municipal bylaw enforcement staff, and local motorized and non-motorized clubs to develop a strategy aimed at discouraging non-permitted uses and illegal activities from occurring within municipal trails. We would like to add that would require adequate signage to designated trail use, have barriers in place to prevent inappropriate use. I called the people who are managing the rail trail between Meaford and Collingwood a very heavily used recreation trail that they limit to non-motorized vehicles. It cross-sections highways and roads at many frequent places. And I said, how do you manage this? What do you do? And they have put up major barriers and signage, and they say they have no problem. And their neighbors are very content with the use of that trail. So I think it's very possible with a coordinated plan in place. I would also like to echo a couple of things that were said in terms of the moving forward. We really look forward to the adoption of the master plan, and that in particularly the contraventions with the NEC Act be addressed immediately. Would really like to know how this process will proceed, and I would echo what has been said in terms of the idea of a subcommittee to make sure things are followed through on, and that this does not sit on a shelf, and the inclusion of interested constituents to assist in the work in that subcommittee, I think would be an excellent forward-thinking move. So thank you all very much for allowing us to make this presentation.
Mr. Snyder, really appreciate all your your great comments. Is there any way I could ask you, would you be able to put all those great comments in writing and forward on to our municipal office?
My understanding is they should be in front of you.
With the agenda.
With the agenda.
Okay, I do, sorry.
As well as our original letter of March 27th.
Okay, sorry, I do not have it in front of me, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. If any of you do not have it, I would think speak to Brittany or get a message to me, and we will make sure that you get them.
There were the additional points that we can put in.
Yeah, we can make sure we can put them in writing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I see hands up all over the place. Brittany, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the Schneiders for participating. We always welcome public feedback, so thank you for exercising your right to participate. All of council does have your written confirmation that you had sent to myself last week as a part of their agenda package. So again, thank you for circulating that. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. I think we've had a really great discussion here, one about the plan and two about ATVs. As Anand had suggested, the Recreation and Trails Master Plan is simply an overarching document that Council will use to guide the future of our recreation facilities and trails throughout the next few years, being 5 to 10 years. We have recognized as staff and as council that ATVs continue to be an issue within our community, and staff are addressing those issues in consultation with our local partners. So again, thank you for bringing your concerns forward. I think council has two options in front of them this evening. You can direct staff to either present the Recreation and Trails Master Plan for final approval on July 15th, or we can bring it back once we have the final staff report that addresses the ATV issue, which we're attempting to bring to you for August 5th or 12th, at which meeting we can then move forward with adopting the plan, should that be council's wish. So we can postpone it until we have all of the NEC information, or we can approve it as an overarching document. So I just wanted to present that for council's information while we move through our next discussions.
Thank you, Brittany, for your great comments. And I agree that I would like to have all the information on NEC and how we're going to address this very important issue. I'd like to have that before we actually adopt our plan. And by us not adopting the plan until then, it's not really going to impact it too much. Councillor Coburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much to the Schneiders as well. I think we're lucky to have ratepayers amongst us who are as well informed as these folks are. I appreciate hearing from you too. I just have a quick remark. I love the idea of having lawyers perhaps look at some of the agreements that are in place, and I like the idea of a subcommittee as well. What I don't, what I'm afraid of is that in following these kinds of measures, this is going to be delayed even further. We know from the NEC that this has been an issue before council, previous councils, for over 4 years now. So given that we know that we are contravening the Niagara Escarpment Plan, our official plan, the Grey County official plan, as well as the Niagara Escarpment Act, and I believe possibly the Planning Act, I believe this is one area where we need to move forward with right away in terms of Len Holly, Curly Harnden, and I'm missing one, the Coles Trail. We know we're in contravention with these particular trails. Let's get on that as a starting point, fix the bylaw, and move forward. So that's my comment. I wonder, I think we have Jen with us in this meeting. I'm not 100% sure, but I was curious to know, Mr. Mayor, if Jen might be able to give us her perspective on this particular issue from a planning and zoning perspective, and if she's had any communication with the NEC as well.
Before I go to Jen, Anne-Marie, have you any comments first?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just exactly kind of what I had said earlier, and the fact that we do recognize that there is that outstanding issue with the NEC in those two areas, and that is what we were talking about and what Brittany has proposed for a report back to council on August 5th or the 12th at the latest would be a bylaw change and looking at those two areas that are in contravention of NEC. So that is coming forward. That is certainly what Brittany and I have both spoke to tonight. So certainly we are aware of those two areas. We have been waiting for information from NEC, but we believe that we have enough information right now that we can move forward with that report.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. I was a little concerned with some of Mr. Snyder's comments, and one I would like staff to bring back in your report to make sure we look at the whole municipality, any NEC areas and so on, make sure we're not contravening any areas. And I would like to have a map produced that shows all our trails and show us which ones are affected by NEC and so on and so forth, which we could easily do, I think.
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is the information we actually were waiting for from NEC to get some verification. But what I think we will do is we will move forward with the two areas that we do know of. And then if we have subsequent areas, then we can bring another report back if that works for everybody. That's kind of what we're looking at right now, just simply for timelines. We have not, again, because of COVID and whatever else, we just have not received information that we have been waiting for, but we feel we have enough, especially for the two sensitive areas, to move forward.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Before I go back to Kathy, is Jen, do you want to make any comments, Jen?
I would just echo what Anne-Marie has said. We have acknowledged that it's not that the Niagara Escarpment Plan doesn't support motorized uses within lands under the plan. So it's just a matter of staff looking into this a little further and bringing back a report for council's consideration.
Well, we look forward to that report. I think it's going to be a good report. Before I move on, does any council member have any other questions on this report? All we're going to do here tonight is accept Mr. Desai's presentation, and we'll delay approving the master plan until a little bit later on till we receive these reports. Is that my understanding from council? Deputy Mayor, you have your hand up.
I do. I agree with delaying until we have the NEC report. I just have a question about the Len Holly, Curly Harnden, and Coles Side Road trails. Are those actually our trails, or are they side trails off of Bruce Trail? And do we need Bruce Trail involved here? I just want clarification on who has jurisdiction over those trails.
It's a good question, and I think maybe when staff do the report, they're going to come back with that information. Because I can't answer that.
That's fine. I'll wait for the staff report. Thank you.
Seeing their hands up and so on, again, thank you to the Snyders, Ann and Clark, for your great presentation, and please continue to send your comments on anything at all to council. We really appreciate it.
Excuse me, Miss.
Carol, are you on? Carol,
I have a question.
Carol, I can't hear you. Go ahead, Carol.
It says I'm unmuted. I have a question for Mr. Desai.
Go ahead, Carol.
Is it unusual? What?
Go ahead, Carol.
Is it unusual?
Carol, you are
Is it
muted.
unusual? Not according to my laptop. Okay. Still not picking me up?
Now we can hear you, Carol. Go ahead.
I have a question for Mr. Desai. Is it normal to put timelines on some of these action plans the same as we do on our strategic plan? We definitely have to rank our trails. And I think if we don't put timelines on, it's going to be the same thing next year. One thing I want to point out, everybody keeps saying our trails. We only have one trail, and that's the rail trail. All these other trails are on road allowances, unopened or open. When are we going to deal with our bylaw that allows this type of activity?
Mr. Desai?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Barfoot's question. Yes, it's not unusual to have a master plan assign timing to its individual recommendations. So in section 7 of our master plan, we have summarized each action plan according to short term, which would really be within the next 3 years, medium term, which would occur in the next 4 to 6 years, and long-term action plans, which would occur towards the end of the master plan, that 7 to 10 year time frame. And we've identified a number of ongoing action plans. So, things that would be occurring over the course of the entire 10 years. So, yeah, I think, you as council and township staff are evaluating priorities and working those into your annual work plans. It's not to say, though, that, the timing that's identified in the master plan is the actual timing that needs to happen. There will be circumstances. For example, you may wish to accelerate timing of a recommendation, given the need to address something like a contravention of a plan or policy. If there's grant opportunities, you may want to accelerate things. So yes, we would agree that timing is critical for these action plans, and defining them is important.
Thank you, Mrs. Zai.
Okay, now, Mr. Mayor and Anne Marie, I'm looking for an answer. When are we going to deal with this bylaw?
So the bylaw is coming to the meeting on August 5th or August 12th, whichever one we can get it to.
Okay, Councillor Barfoot.
Oh, I'll think of something else later.
We're all welcome. Look forward to it. Thank you. If we've no more discussion on our master plan, Mr. Zai, thank you again very much for your presentation. And and hopefully you get your hydro back on.
Yeah, it just came back on, Mr. Mayor, just a few minutes ago. So the air conditioning's back on. Again, I want to just say thank you to everybody at the township. So, we really appreciated the opportunity to work with yourselves and your community on this. So we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Brittany, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I just wanted to clarify for all of council. So taking into consideration all of the discussions we've had today, we will postpone formal adoption of this master plan until we have had the conversation regarding the NEC and the ATVs. So my intent is to have that report most likely at the August 12th meeting, as we do have a large public meeting at August 5th. So you can anticipate seeing a report and a subsequent bylaw at the August 12th meeting, as well as a bylaw to formally approve the Rec and Trails Master Plan as it has been presented this evening.
Thanks, Brittany. Do you want a motion from council or just direction to staff? That's what we intend.
Direction to staff is fine.
Okay, I see no hands saying otherwise, so that is a direction to staff. Okay, well, thanks everybody. I guess I'll move on to agenda then. I have a recommendation that the Township of Georgian Bluffs is satisfied that all matters under section 51 and 51.1 of the Planning Act have been addressed to their satisfaction, and that development of the lands is addressed through the existing master development agreement, master subdivision agreement, the site plan agreements and Ontario Building Code, and that the township support an exemption from Section 51 of the Planning Act for development legally described as Part Block 75, 16M15, RP 16R 11054, Part 1, commonly known as the Hollow at Cobble Beach, and that this resolution be forwarded to the County of Grey and the applicant. Do we have someone to move to put the motion on the floor, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Carleton, second by Councillor Thompson. If there's no discussion, Jen, do you want to speak to this report?
Yes. So this is a fairly straightforward request. Pretty much block 13 and 14 at the Hollow and Cobble Beach are ready to be registered. So the owners are looking to create a condominium corp and register the units to be able to move forward with their developments. As the report says, we've issued building permits for both blocks. One block actually has occupancy for the 4 units. And we do have certification from their engineer that the services were installed to service these units. So it's really just a process. You can see on the first page, of the report, where blocks 13 and 14 are located. And council did approve a similar request for block 15 in 2019. If anyone has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jen. Does council have any questions? Seeing none, Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot?
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn?
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson?
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle?
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carleton?
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley?
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thanks, Brittany. Moving on to our agenda, I have another recommendation that report PL 2020-33 from the senior planner dated July 8th, 2020 regarding amendment application to the NEC to extend the Wharton urban boundaries be received, and that the committee provide direction to staff to continue to pursue or to withdraw this application. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Councillor Thompson. Jen, do you want to speak to this report? You're muted, Jen.
Sorry, I'm looking for some direction from the committee, from council, on how you would like to proceed with an application that was filed back in 2015 to amend the Niagara Escarpment Plan to extend the Wyerton urban boundary. So the intent of that application was to extend the urban boundary to include the airport, what I refer to as the airport proper. So that's the where the terminal building is and the hangars are. The reason why we applied for that was to remove development control and allow the township to have township zoning on the lands, so that we would be able to have more control over the permitted uses on that property. So if you can see from the second page of my report on figure 1, the airport zoning, it shows you the area that's in gray is the area that's under the Niagara Escarpment plan area. So that is the section of land that we were applying to remove from the plan, or add to the Wyerton urban area. The remainder of the airport is zoned airport. So we do have within our zoning bylaw, we do have the ability to allow a variety of uses, provided they don't conflict with the federal zoning regulations on the remainder of the property. So I have received correspondence from the MNRF, and they would like us to let them know what we would like to do with this application. It's been sitting for a while. So I did provide 3 options for council to consider. They're not all of the options. If there is an avenue that council would prefer to pursue, that's fine. I'm just looking for some direction on what council would like to do with this application.
Thank you, Jen. Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. Through you, Jen, I wonder, I'm looking at the map and I don't see a legend. So I wonder if you could clarify for me, is the yellow line, the outline, is that our entire property, like airport, the entire airport property? And what we're looking to reclassify is the gray section, the NEC section?
That is correct.
So I guess I don't see any downside to going ahead with this request. If it will improve, if I'm interpreting this correctly, if it will improve our ability to use that land in a variety of different ways, I would think that we would want to pursue it unless there's a downside that I'm not seeing.
Thanks, Councillor Colburn. I agree 100% with your comment, and I don't know of any downsides unless the planner or the CEO does.
I'm just concerned that we don't have any other plans in place. So I did note in the report that generally when you remove, when land is moved into an urban designation, it's because there are plans and policies in place that will correspond with the Niagara Escarpment Plan. So then instead of having there needing to be duplicate permissions, they're able to remove their development control off of those lands. So just as an example, in Oxenden, we have the Bolter subdivision. And because we have the subdivision agreement in place and they've been through a review process, and we have demonstrated that there are plans and provisions and we have the capacity to be able to zone it for residential uses, they have then responded that I have written correspondence saying that once that development has been built out, then they would be willing to remove development control from those properties. So we would have zoning in place to make sure that that land use corresponds with the Niagara Escarpment Plan. Right now, we have a strategic plan for the airport. We don't have a business plan. What we have to do is demonstrate that we have a plan in place moving forward to for that property to develop appropriately. So we need to justify the expansion of that settlement boundary. The other issue is that the county official plan doesn't support extension of settlement areas on private services. So because we don't have a plan in place to extend services, municipal services to the airport, and we don't technically have a business plan to say, we don't need sewer services at the airport because this is how we're going to develop the lands. There's no justification there. So that's what I'm concerned about. I don't have a justification to say to them, yes, continue to process this application because we're all lined up. We know what we want to do. So if council would like to, continue with the application, we need to have more of a plan moving forward to say that's our strategic plan. That's how we're going to operationalize it. These are the things that we're going to be able to do, and this is a tangible vision for development of the airport.
Thanks, Jen. Deputy Mayor Carlson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Colburn has said as well. I don't really see a downside to proceeding. I think it's a positive if we want to move this to becoming a regional airport owned by the region rather than just our municipality. that it would be good to maybe just ask for additional time until we get those plans in place that would allow us to, either us to move to next steps or someone else to move it forward to next steps. So my suggestion would be to request additional time and move ahead with getting the plans we need.
Thanks for your comments, Deputy Mayor.
I have a question.
Councillor, okay, go ahead, Carol.
Okay. So we're lacking some of these plans. Like a business plan is very important. There are 2 plans laying on my council desk. I'm not even sure what they are. But our strategic plan for the airport was 2017. So is that going to need to be updated for their purposes? And there must be a company out there that does studies on airports. Can you answer that for me, Jen?
Yeah, there's a number of different planning and consulting companies that will look into like feasibility studies and capacity studies for the airport. So they're able to come in and do a comparison with what's in the area, what's in the province, and provide some more tangible information for the township to utilize. We have a strategic plan. It provides some, responsibilities, priorities, values, and guiding principles, but there's no implementation here. So how are we going to increase aviation revenue? We have a number of things to do to follow, but where is the business plan to implement that? And those companies would be able to have a look at this plan and say, this is where you start. So because it's an airport and it's, it's really a unique and valuable, I think everybody realizes how valuable it is to the region. We need somebody who has a higher level of expertise to really take a look at this and put us in the right direction.
Thank you, Jen.
Jen, thank you very much for that information. Okay, if we contact a company like that, certainly their report would carry a lot of weight with Niagara Escarpment, I would think, and it provides justification for what we're trying to do. So let's get all these plans in place, ask for an extension, let's get these plans in place and know where we're going and how we're going to get there.
Thank you, Carol, for your good comments. Councillor Colburn, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that we need to do a feasibility study before we even start talking about a business plan. I've read some airport feasibility studies that say, it's not feasible in an area. So I think we need that information to even know if moving forward with a business plan is even pragmatic. The second thing I wanted to clarify was when I asked about there being no downside, what I was getting at is if we're not able to, in a reasonable amount of time, secure more regional support for this airport, it would be nice to have it zoned, more of it zoned in such a way that if we do have to sell and look at getting rid of some property, that it be zoned in such a way that it's more attractive for developers, for example. Is that the kind of thing that we can add to some rationale behind carrying forward with this particular application?
So we've already submitted the application to extend the urban area, and that may be part of a justification moving forward, is to increase, to make it a more viable airport. Yeah.
So, does our CEO have any comments?
Well, I agree. I think a feasibility study is required. I know that that's something that we have talked about in the past, and I agree with Councillor Coburn and Deputy Mayor that that's something we need in order to move forward.
So my hearing, council and staff direction is that we'll delay, ask for more time on the application to give us more time to put in the proper reports like feasibility study and the business plan and so on and so forth. Is that what I'm hearing from council?
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Barfoot.
This company that Jen was talking about, I understand that they would, the report they would do would encompass a feasibility plan and a business plan, laying out the possibility. I think we should pursue that.
I agree with what you're saying, Councillor Barfoot. Jen, any comment?
Yeah, so generally we would provide them, we would provide the company with a request. So we would let them know what information that we needed them to provide, what sort of review we would like them to provide, and then they would come back with that. So we could definitely include both of those requests.
Okay. Thank you, Jen. If there's no other comments on this motion we have on the floor, Jen, Brittany, will you take the vote? Or do you just want a recommendation? Sorry, it's not it's a recommendation.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I can just interject procedurally here. This motion is separated into two lines. The first being to receive the planner's report, and the second being to provide direction to staff. So it would be my recommendation that we amend this motion to remove the second line and provide the planner with clear direction. Now, from this conversation, I have created an amendment to the plan to the motion, sorry. So through you, Mr. Chair, I will read the amendment that I am suggesting.
Thank you, Brittany.
So my amendment to this recommendation will simply exclude the second line and provide the following direction to Jen. That the senior planner is hereby directed to request that the existing application to extend the Wyerton urban boundary to include the Wyerton-Keppel International Airport be extended pending completion of additional studies. I did not specify which studies we need to be completed. That way it is left open-ended and we can determine what we need further down the road.
Thank you, Brittany. Does the mover and seconder agree with that amendment to the motion?
So to clarify, the motion was moved by Kathy and seconded by Ryan.
Okay, I see heads nodding. Ryan, do you agree with that? Yeah, yes, okay. So we're ready for the vote then, Brittany, on the motion, amended motion?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just for clarity, I will read the motion as in its entirety prior to taking the vote, so council is clear on what they're voting on. That the report PL 2020-33 from the senior planner dated July 8th regarding the amendment application to the NEC to extend the Wyerton urban boundary be received, and that the senior planner is hereby directed to request that the existing application to extend the Wyerton urban boundary to include the Wyerton-Keppel International Airport be extended pending completion of additional studies. So through you, Mr. Chair, I will now take the vote on the motion as amended. When I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. So moving on to our agenda, we're down to operations. I have a recommendation that the June 2020 facility report be received for information. Do I have someone to move to put on the floor, please? Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Thompson. Zach, or is it Tyler going to speak to this report?
This is Zach. I can say report. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yes, I can, Zach.
Yeah, it's our monthly facility revenue report.
Sorry, Zach. Zach, we can't hear you. See heads nodding no.
Hello?
Mr. Mayor, Tyler has his hand raised. Maybe he could take this for Zach.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was more of a suggestion. Is there a possibility you have two devices on, Zach? It sounded like you had an echo going through.
I don't. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Okay. I'm not sure what was going on there. I took my headphones out, so hopefully that helps. No, it's our monthly statistical report for facilities. Obviously, I like to have a comparison in there that hopefully shows increased usage compared to last year, but unfortunately, due to some circumstances this year, obviously our facilities are not being used right now. So I just wanted you to get a general understanding of what we've missed out on basically over the last month, cumulative. Sorry, for the whole year basically. I put some notes in there just to sort of give you an idea of what we're working with right now. Obviously, some things are loosening up a little bit to allow certain groups use indoor recreational facilities. Some municipalities are starting to consider opening up to those, so I'm really keeping my eye on what approach they're taking, especially the ones with ice, as we're quickly approaching on what would generally be our ice season, the start of September, putting ice in. So how municipalities that are operating summer ice are opening up and allowing people to use those facilities. Obviously, a lot can happen between now and then, but it's sort of that time to start preparing for that and figuring out what we need to get in place if we are going to move forward with putting ice in as usual. So as I mentioned in the notes there, you'll see that some of the larger governing bodies, the Skate Canadas and Hockey Canadas, do have the return to play framework. Those are sort of overarching frameworks. Obviously, every municipality is a little bit different, and our facilities are very different from each other. So we have our own requirements that'll need to be in place to safely take people into these facilities when we're comfortable to take people into them. But there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on to make sure that when people are invited back into our facilities, that it'll be safe to do so.
Thank you, Zach. Does council have any questions on the report? Seeing heads nodding no. Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot?
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn?
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson?
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle?
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton?
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Okay, moving on to our agenda. The next report is that the committee as a whole accepts report OPS 2020-29, Rtmp International Airport update for information. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Zachary, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just start off at the top of the report. As Zach said, we're still seeing a decrease in traffic overall for the month of June. Just on the positive note, we were up from May, about 100 movements. So we're sitting at 460 movements for the month of June. It's still a considerable increase over the previous month, but we're still down from the previous year. We actually did see a reduction in our avgas sales So yesterday I did perform a comparison to airports in the surrounding area, and I actually found out that Wyerton's offering the best price for avgas at $1.70 for about 130 kilometer radius around the airport, and that's including all the other surrounding airports. Other than that, our jet fuel sales were totally took a hit for the month of June. We didn't see any jet traffic come in, which we normally see coming from the States at this time, going to the islands to do the hunting. Other than that, medevac flights, we only had the one in for the month of June. We did see an increase for the month of July so far. Other than that, the Hungry Hangar is now completely open. The patio is completely open. They're operating from 9 to 7 now. New sump pump was installed, outfitted with a new parking spot. Runway field spraying has been completed. PAPI approach, tree trimming, avgas, and noise report log, key control program, and the fire alarms license has been submitted to the RCMP. Other than that, I don't really have much to report on for the airport.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. Does council have any questions of Zach? Seeing nothing, Brittany, can you take the vote, please?
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot?
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn?
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson?
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle?
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton?
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley?
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Okay, moving on. My next recommendation is a report OPS 2020-30 from Tyler Yonke, Director of Operations, be received, and the council hereby direct the Director of Operations to investigate the assumption of Big Rock Road, Alice Street, Spencer Avenue, Colon Drive, and Francis Drive prior to the indicated 2-year period, further to section 1.6 of bylaw 60/2016, and amend site plan agreement, and further that the Director of Operations shall report their findings to a future meeting of council for final approval of assumption. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Tyler, you want to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mayor Burley. We entered into a site plan agreement back in 2016, I believe it was, with Mr. McKinnon, Mr. Smart, and numbered company. The substantial completion, if you will, came in last year. I think it was February on the report. In our agreement, basically says, you know, we can wait the 2 years and then enter into assumption process, or this particular agreement says that we can assume early if both parties agree. So that's basically the question I'm bringing to council right now, is saying, would to look into that option. For information, this is actually, the majority of this is actually an existing road that has been around the township, and that's always a major concern with assuming roads is settlement, and that's why we put a time period on them, is to see what they do in those 2-year period, let them show their deficiencies, and then ask the developer to repair them. So in this circumstance, there's only Spencer, and it's not a long portion, but again, this is for consideration, basically to direct staff, or rather myself, to go out there and to start the assumption process early, if you're comfortable with that. I'd happy to entertain any questions or comments you may have.
Thanks, Tyler. Does council have any questions? Deputy Mayor Carlson.
I just have a.
Deputy Mayor first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess my question has to do with what I consider to be the south end of Francis Lake, where there's that strip that separates the two roads. When we assume these, are we also looking to connect with that other section, or is this staying as a separate section of road?
Tyler?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and a great question, Deputy Mayor. So the way that we have to look at this right now is there's basically two different road systems, although they share the same name on the frontage. So Francis Lake Road does, in fact, travel along Francis Lake. There is a 1 foot reserve that we're in the process of trying to acquire, and but these are two separate. I don't want to use the word agreement here for lack of better words. So the south portion is actually something that went through council. We were petitioned to assume that road. This is actually a site plan agreement, and I use that term as I would really like to use the term subdivision agreement, because that's actually kind of what it is. But it's because the lots were already developed back in the checkerboard days, that it's not a subdivision. It's actually a site plan, but it's for the development, and then we're going through the same process of assuming the roads. So this is the portion of Big Rock Road as it comes down, and then that newer Spencer Road ties back into Francis Lake. So I can 100% see your confusion there. It took me a long time to wrap my head around this one as well. But yes, the other portion is supposed to be assumed by the end of the summer as well. So yeah, they're both got the same name, and they're both going at the same time here. So
what you're saying, Tyler, is that you're dealing with one item at a time.
Actually, they're both going at the same time right now, and I understand the confusion. So yeah, at the south end, but this one in particular is with the owners in our site plan agreement, just for Big Rock Road and the small portion of Francis Lake Road. They call it Francis Lake East is what they call it. And they also have a residential community, almost like a condo group, through the years, who have paid for the maintenance and everything else. So that's how also we can separate and know them as well. So they'd be known as the Big Rock Road Association, and then the Francis Lake Association is actually the one to the south.
Thanks, Tyler. Councillor Barfoot, did I hear you wanting to make comment? Carol?
Councillor Barfoot, okay, now you're not muted.
I was back there last weekend taking a look. So we are not assuming any of the old roads in Francis Lake.
No, this agreement does actually. So what we have in front of us is just to direct staff to go out there and to start the assumption process. So obviously all the work has to be done. Another report has to be brought to council, and all this information has to be brought forward. But no, not just the new roads. There's actually the right-of-way itself is privately owned in that area. So that is the process, and that's how the site plan agreement has been set up, to say that once we develop it and we went through the appropriate processes, then the municipality, after this review process, will be reviewing those roads and adopting them by bylaw through the Highway Traffic Act.
Okay, another question I have for you, because I remember on the other Francis Lake Road, it was not equipment and garbage truck friendly. So how about this one? Are we going to need extensive brushing on them?
No, but again, this site plan agreement clearly identifies the roads that we will be assuming. So just to be absolutely clear, there is still a northern portion of Francis Lake Road that comes off of basically north of Spencer that we do not want to assume. We won't be assuming, and it's for that consideration. It's a dead end, and it's well below any municipal standard that we have. So again, it's in the agreement itself. It's very specific on what roads we're outlining, and perhaps I should have brought a map to clearly identify that. My apologies. No. Now, when you're speaking of Francis Lake to the south, and if we do acquire that land, yes, so we're going to try and tie these two together, and there will be some more tree clearing and grubbing. So again, sorry for muddying the waters, if you will, but you're right, we do have to do some tree clearing and grubbing once these two projects come together.
So is that up to the township? Is that up to the township to do any brushing on the Big Rock Road? Or not the Big Rock Road, but the other side of Francis Lake? Or is it up to the developer?
If I may, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Thank you. No, and again, the site plan agreement is very clear on the area that it has to this site plan agreement identifies. So it's that extra portion by that other 1 foot reserve and tying these two roads together. No, there's nothing in this agreement about that. That's for sure.
Tyler, so when you bring your assumption report back to council, you'll have a map with it?
Yes. Yeah. No. 100%.
Okay.
I will.
Councillor Barfoot, do you have any other questions? I can hardly hear you.
No, thank you, Tyler.
Oh, excellent.
Okay. If council's no other questions on this motion before us, Brittany, will you take the vote, please?
Okay, so when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Graham Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. We're down to finance. I have a recommendation that the updated financial report be received for information. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Deputy Mayor Carlton. Cassie, any comments?
No comments.
Council, have any questions? Seeing none, Brittany, we take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Graham Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Down to our next recommendation, that the updated tax arrears analysis report be received for information. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Barfoot. Cassie, any comments on your report?
I just wanted to point out that obviously tax penalty and interest is much lower due to the waiving of that fee for several months due to COVID. But when we look at the outstanding tax balance in comparison to prior year, we're really not that far off. So we did provide relief measures to our residents for taxation, but not a lot took advantage of it. So we've started charging penalty and interest again effective July 1st. And I'm comfortable that leaving the due dates at August 24th and October 24th for the final installment is reasonable for our residents.
Thanks, Cassie. Does council have any questions on the tax arrear report? Seeing none, Brittany, we take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson.
For.
Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Down to our CAO report. I have a recommendation that report CAO 2011 from interim CAO Anne-Marie Shaw regarding an update on the strategic plan for Georgian Bluffs be received for information. Someone to move, put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Councillor Pringle. Anne-Marie, you want to speak to the report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report is just giving you an update on the strategic plan. Back in December 18th of 2019, Georgian Bluffs Council did pass a bylaw adopting the plan, and this is just a timeline and an update on where we're at. Staff have filled it out, just giving council an idea of what department is responsible for some of the objectives. There is a task list listing some of the things that have been done or that need to be done, and some anticipated completion dates. Not all of the areas have been filled out. There are still some planning, some timelines, and of course in the anticipation of a new CAO, so that some of those areas will still be filled out. But I thought it was important, and I know that council had been asking about a timeline and a plan as to where the strategic plan was left. And this could be a good communication tool eventually when it is all complete. And it also will allow resource allocation for future years when you're looking at this plan as to what to put in your budget and whatnot. But this is just a starting point, and just wanted to give an update to council.
Thank you, Anne Marie. Does council have any questions? Seeing nothing, Brittany, we take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion as presented. Councillor Carol Barfoot?
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore-Coburn?
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson?
4.
Councillor Graham Pringle?
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton?
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley?
4.
Thank you, and that carries.
Thank you. Moving along, we're down to public question period. Brittany, did we have any comments from the public?
We did not receive any, no.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business, none. Down to new business. Councillor Coburn, a discussion regarding a notice of motion agenda category. Councillor Coburn, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. This is just a suggestion for council to consider. As much as we know how much Brittany loves us putting motions on the floor on the fly, I've noticed that other councils do have a standing agenda item, usually towards the end of the agenda, that is notice of motion. So that if I were going to bring a motion forward to a subsequent council meeting, I would have the opportunity then to say, I'm just giving notice of motion, in general, what that motion would be pertaining to. And it just simply gives everyone a heads up that that's coming along, perhaps for the next council meeting. I've run it by a couple of staff members. They like the idea because it gives them time to prepare and put some thought into it before we just throw it out there. It also gives council members time to think about it and do a little research and look into issues a little more carefully so that we can have some more thoughtful discussion and maybe more informed decision making. So it's just a tool that I think would benefit everyone concerned, and just a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. It's a great suggestion. On the county level, we do have a notice of motion at the start of the agenda, and it works out very good. The person who wants to bring the notice of motion forward announces it and then speaks with the clerk to get the proper procedure and so on and so forth, and brings it forward at the next council meeting. So it's a good idea. Comments from council? Seeing none, Brittany, do we just ask you to put it on the agenda, or what is the protocol?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, the Deputy Mayor has her hand raised.
Really? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say I'm in favor of it. I think seeing how it's used at the county, it definitely does work. It gives opportunity for everyone to think about it. When that notice of motion comes forward, it doesn't necessarily have to be at the next council meeting. It could be at a subsequent one, and normally that would be outlined at the time you're stating notice of motion, but I think it's a good idea to have it there.
I stand corrected, Deputy Mayor. You are correct in what you said. Not very often you're right, but you are.
Whoa.
Brittany, what is
Mayor, I agree with Councillor Coburn and the Deputy Mayor, regardless of what you say.
Thank you, Carol. Brittany, what is the protocol? How do we just direct you to put on the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, if we could, I would like to, for Councillor Coburn to provide a notice of motion indicating that the current agenda structure be amended to include a notice of motion category. I will present that at the July 17th meeting, Councillor Coburn, with your permission, of course. And then moving forward and including July 17th, we will have a notice of motion category listed on all Committee of the Whole and Council agendas.
Thank you, Brittany. So Councillor Coburn, you'll speak to our clerk and get your notice of motion brought forward.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're down to closed session. That the committee of the whole move into closed session at 5:59 with the acting clerk, treasurer, HR manager remaining in the virtual room to discuss 12.1, a personal matter about an identifiable individual. Need someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Coburn. Brittany, you take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you are for or against the motion. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Moore Coburn.
For.
Councillor Ryan Thompson. Councillor Thompson. Okay, Councillor Thompson is absent. Councillor Grant Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries. And just as a reminder for all of council, you will now leave the open meeting invitation and move into the closed meeting invitation. You have 5 minutes to do so.
Just so council, to staff and council, this shouldn't take too long.
Okay, everyone, we are now back. Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Brittany. We've no other business to discuss here tonight. So I need a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Thompson, second by Councillor Pringle. If there's no discussion on the motion, Brittany, you take the vote, please.
Okay, when I call your name, please indicate whether you're for or against adjournment at 6:14 p.m. Councillor Carol Barfoot.
For.
Councillor Paul Sutherland is absent. Councillor Kathy Mark Coburn.
For.
Councillor Rtmp Thompson.
For.
Councillor Graham Pringle.
For.
Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton.
For.
And Mayor Dwight Burley.
For.
Thank you, and that carries, and we are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Night, everyone.
See you next.
Good night.